Welcome to Tattoo Senti, the podcast on the art of smelling. Each week, Tattoo Senti happens to be the podcast which explores creativity and audacity at the heart of the world of perfumes and flavors, so to encourage you to think and smell differently. It's an invitation from the meeting of various players, such as a perfumer, a picker of perfume essences, an entrepreneur, a chocolate maker, just as much inspiring people with whom I will share their creative and daring experiences during a friendly conversation. I invite you to investigate the creativity, which is nothing else, as Einstein used to say. Creativity is intelligence having fun. It's also to invent, experiment, take risk, break rules, make mistakes, but also have fun while keeping his child soul. In fact, a whole voyage through the art of smelling and the art of tasting. Welcome on Tattoo Senti. Bangkok, Paris, one-way ticket that Pissara took one day in 2010. She will bring in her luggage her father's poetry, freedom, love, and passion of the art. All in all, the foundry ingredients dedicated to the success of Dusita, her perfume brand. Nothing has stopped her. With having audacity, discipline, and enthusiasm, Pissara will overcome the barrier of the French language and assimilate easily into the secret world of perfume. More, she is present just as much for the creation as being at the head of her business. Nevertheless, it will not prevent her from paying attention to others and to herself, so to be responsive to her fans around the world. So, always her head in the stars and her feet on the ground. I invite you to follow me to discover Pissara. Hello, Pissara.
Hi, Bettina.
So, a Moonlight in Shanghai is your last perfume. Where does it take us to?
It takes us on the night I went on the top of the mountain of Doi Suthep in Chiang Mai, the northern city of Thailand.
Mm-hmm.
It was a beautiful night, Bettina.
Yes.
It was full of the beautiful, like the full moon.
Mm-hmm.
And around you see the golden temple, and down you see the little light from the village far apart. And I want to capture that moment in poem.
What is it? Is its olfactive story?
So the olfactive story based on this memory of that moment. So it translates from the light of the moon, which I translate into like a citrus, tropical fruits of Thailand.
Uh-huh.
So that it's like a very beautiful blend of the pineapple, which came from the grapefruit, and certain different type of citrus all together to recreate this image of yellow fruit that is like a moonlight, and then the reflection of the light, and then I create jasmine, night blooming jasmine, absolute, to connect between that fruit and that thick wood base that describe the tropical forest at night.
All right. So I heard that the next Dusita perfume is about to be launched in May. So without saying too much, can you give us just 3 keywords so we know little about it?
Definitely, with pleasure. So one keyword would be ballerina. Second keyword would be contemporary, which means that unisex perfume that is contemporary. And the third keyword would be the vintage perfume that I love.
All right. Wonderful. So now we're going to wait for May. But in the meantime, I invite you to follow me on this olfactive promenade with Pissara, so to get to know her better. So now let's talk about Pissara. So you were born in Bangkok. So your Madeleine de Proust must be in Thailand. So what is your strongest olfactive souvenir?
It would be the smell of my tropical gardens in the house I was born with. I'm very fortunate to be born in a house with a very big garden. So we have beautiful lotus pond, and then we have also the banana tree, mango tree, and a lot of tropical flowers. So that remind me of the time during the twilight hour when I was walking alone and smelling do you know ilang
Yes.
ilang, champaka,
Or the white flowers.
jasmine? Yes, I love it. And the smell of frangipani bring me back directly to that very moment of happiness.
So, when you arrived to Paris, was there an odor or a
Yeah.
perfume that surprised or impressed you most?
Yes, it would be the memory of my father, the smell of Mitsuko by Guerlain. It's a perfume that my father brought me from Paris many years ago before I was born for my mom. And when I came here, when I smelled the people wearing it, I thought of that memory.
And have you worn it yourself?
Yes, just to remember of my father.
All right. So, in fact, your first name, Pissara, means in your native language about freedom. So, how important
Yes.
freedom was in your family?
For my family, freedom is everything. I was born in a family that let the children be whatever they believe, whatever they're passionate to be. And my father, who was a poet, he taught me the importance of giving yourself to the arts with passion.
All right. And in fact, as you said, you have been brought up with lots of love, which counts a lot for you. Have you got a story about it and to tell us how about the atmosphere or about it?
You know what? There was a story that I never told anyone else. It was story of love. You know, sometimes love, you don't need to say a word to tell the other that you love that person. So I was 16 years old and I went to the USA to study my high school, to spend my high school there in Boston, Massachusetts. And my father went to visit me. Not only he went there, but he also brought me the dolls I used to play when I was young. He said, "Oh, I want to remind you of your childhood, so you don't have a boyfriend too fast."
He was very witty.
Yes, and every time I see that, I remember that moment very well, and I think of him, you know.
So, in fact, your perfume career has not been a quiet river. You even performed in various films as an actress before, so which I don't know if everyone knows about it. But tell us what you learned from these experiences.
So I was very fortunate in my life. I have been doing different kind of things, various experience. For me, I have learned so many things. I think sometimes we don't choose what life given to us in the moment. And the reason why I accept to take the role as the leading actress in a film in Thailand was that I don't know if I'm gonna do the same thing or not, but it's just one of the kind experience. And when we take life as it comes, sometimes we accept the opportunity. And what I have learned, like the same thing about perfume. The story was that I came to Paris, right? And then I brought my creation that I create. Some creation from Thailand before I came to Paris. It was around 10 years ago. What happened is that someone in the business told me that, "Oh, this is so interesting. Why don't you create your own brand?" And the same question go to my head like, "Oh, how many times do we have this kind of experience in our life, you know?" And I'm gonna accept it. I'm gonna do my best.
So your mother is a very well-known Thai teacher in meditation, And she has also published a book. Can you tell us what she considered most important to teach you?
Don't take your time to know yourself, what you really want to do in life. Because once you know what you love, what you want to do, you will do it with all your heart and your passion.
But to learn about oneself is a long path, and it's during all your life, no?
I completely agree with you. It took me more than 10 years. More and even more. It took me even some years that I just collect inspiration, like from traveling, without knowing that one day I'm gonna do this, you know.
So, in fact, that has a great significance in your life. And as a matter of fact, we just talked about it. Your last fragrance evokes the moon. But
Yes.
What have you learned about the moon as a child?
I came from Thailand, and in Thai culture, we are very related to the moon. You know, in the past, our calendar revolve around the full moon, half moon, and no moon at all. So for me, the moon has been in our culture forever, and I associate many happy memory. For example, in the past, me, my mother, my father, we usually walk during the night together in the garden, and we usually look at the moon together and the stars too. So it was associating to many happy childhood memories.
And today you still follow the moon?
Yes, I love to look at the moon, even in Paris.
Today you have also a collection of vintage perfumes, which I think is around 200 or 300. And so what fascinates you about the Old Perfumery?
There's so many things that fascinate me. First of all, when I start to learn about perfumery, is the creativity and the courage to make the beautiful scent of the perfumer that time. You will see the variety of the perfumery of the like olfactive family that is like so wild and so different from this day. And another thing is the design of the illustration, the design of the bottle and the presentation is so beautiful. I love sometimes the collection of Art Nouveau bottle and the collection of some brand that doesn't exist right now.
So I think Fracas, Joy, and Narcisse Noir were the one where you had a great olfactive shock. Can you say a few words, and do you know why? Why is that?
Fracas first is like a beautiful perfection of feminine figure, tuberose, and it's like the emancipation of women who use her femininity to you know to be herself, not afraid to be sensual and beautiful by using the blend of the tuberose and jasmine and different type of flower layering in one perfume, and it was created by a woman as well. That's what I love her so much. I think she has like a very like daring and distinctive work. Bandit, Fracas, amazing.
And Joy and Narcisse?
Joy.
Noir?
When I smelled Joy for the first time, I remember I had tears in my eyes because it's like one of the most precious blend of the absolute, like Rose de May, Jasmine Absolute, Vanilla. You can feel the precious, beautiful raw material there on the tip of the nose, and it really brought me joy, like the name. It's like a real masterpiece in the sense. And for Narcisse Noir, what I love in Narcisse Noir is the mystery part in the perfume. There's something that is like a film noir. It's like a movie that make you want to follow, make you want to know what happened next, and if you try it on your skin, how it's gonna develop next. And that is the beautiful complexity of the formulation in Narcisse Noir.
Absolutely. So, when and why did you decide to come to Paris? How did it all begin?
You know what? My father always told me to study French, and I didn't study French for many years. And then one day, I I had a chance to travel around Europe, and I always dream of having a life and having follow my passion here. So I came to Paris with a dream to create my own perfume house, and I came here as a student first. I study stylist.
All right. And at what moment did you think you were going to stay? Did when you arrived in Paris, you knew you were going to stay, or it was through after a couple of months that you said to yourself, "Yes, I am going to stay and live in Paris"?
So the moment I met the perfume expert in Paris, and then he encouraged me to create my brand, I told myself, no matter how difficult it is, I'm gonna stay in Paris. I'm gonna do my best to create my own brand, and that was 2011.
All right. So, in fact, you created your first perfume, Isara, before arriving in Paris. Can you tell us the story behind it?
Definitely. Pissara, the name came from the word liberty or freedom. And freedom for me, it was the imagination when I first learned about the raw material, and then I select certain material together, and I said this didn't smell like a freedom to me. So it was a blend that made me feel like going to the south of Thailand in Krabi. You walked, there was a lot of beautiful pine tree forest next to the white sand ocean. And that kind of freedom, when you walk through the forest and you feel the wind blowing in your hairs, and that is the blend of Isala. The clary sage, the sandalwood, the pine tree.
So it's a fougere family fragrance.
Yes.
All right. So now let's room for creativity. So, in fact, creativity means inventing, taking risk, breaking the rules. Are you at ease with all these? And have you got a short stories to illustrate creativity?
Definitely. For me, I love all of this definition because I have two sides of story to tell you. First, the story when as a perfumer, because I create my own perfume formulation myself, and to be creative, you must think of you must be able to experience many type of raw materials. Sometimes, for example, I love certain raw material like petitgrain, and I want to interpret petitgrains of Paraguay in a different way. So I blend it with cocoa, cacao absolute, and vanilla, and it became Era One. So it's a different interpretation, and basically breaking all the rules. Like when you do a formulation, actually there is no rules, and we must refresh ourselves to think differently. Otherwise, if we follow the same pattern, we're gonna have the same sense.
Yeah, absolutely. You're right. So, in fact, what is the most difficult challenge you overcome when being a self-taught perfumer?
The challenge is how you discipline yourself, how you learn new things, and how you evaluate your formulations. So that's the challenge. First challenge I had was how I learn different thing, also being updated with the different like raw materials, the new raw material that came into the market. So by doing that now, I must say that this challenge now it became easier with the internet era. So we can learn a lot online, and over I have a really good partners of like who I order the raw materials, and and learn more about it.
Yes.
And then I think the challenge is that to discipline the number of time and the quality time to be in the laboratory and to perfecting the formulation is, I think, it's challenge for everybody, because for me, I must say I'm a little bit perfectionist, so I took me maybe 2000 or even more to create one perfume. And and for me, I like to do trial and errors, to be able to learn from my mistake at the same time. And then the evaluation part, you need to find the good people who can help you evaluate. I think perfumer always have
Yes.
always need someone. I think it's important. For me, I have like a team to help to smell, to select the right formula.
But in fact, how did you start learning about perfumery, and with whom did you start?
So in fact, when I was in Thailand, I didn't learn from school, but I have one friend who is very knowledgeable and another friend who was like an ancient IFF perfumer in England, but like they settled down in Thailand, you know. So basically, they didn't teach me like how to blend, but what they helped was evaluating what I did, which already like very interesting feedback that I got. And then with that experience, when I decided to start the brand, I went back with this friend and I have like a very intensive active activity practice, which I would say last eight hours a day for almost 1 year to really concentrate on like formulation. And I have done, it was a really creative time.
All right. And among the 10 Dusita perfumes, which is the one you reckon is the most creative for you?
So I would say that
not easy maybe, but
the most scandalous perfume of my collection, I would use the word scandalous, that would be Oud Infini. Because I would say in a way it will not please everybody who smell. It was the blend of the real oud and rose de may and sandalwood that I blend this when I start to stay in Paris, and it was my first collection, and it was the perfume that created out of my admiration for the raw materials, and I took structure from Joy Patou actually, and then you know that one, it was a wild beast. It takes you to adventure, to the banya, to the safari, to the exotic places. Some people love it, some people hate it. But
yes, but there's a reaction. Whatever it is, they react. So to end up, one of the characteristics of Dusita's perfume is that you take inspiration from your father's poems. And so tell us, what moves you about his poetry?
Since I was young, at midnight, 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, I always see my father sitting on his desk, writing, translating, and producing some more poetry. And the day he was about to pass away, he told me that he worked all of his life with passion and love, and for me it was just something I want to do for him, and it also one of my like personal values. And then I found that his poem is short but so meaningful. For example, one of the poem I would like to show you is Melody de l'amour.
Yes.
My feeling for you is like a flower blooming in an empty room. You know.
Lovely. But would you say that generally there is always an olfactive hint in his perfumes, in his poems? Sorry.
Yes, I think so. not only olfactive, it also build a story behind. Like you can imagine some stories that happen behind the word, and it
All
lead to
right.
the olfactive and the images, the illustration.
Great. Now let's dive into Dusita's perfume. Who is the first person you actually met in the world of perfumery? In France, maybe, because you said in Thailand, but in France.
One of the very first person I was
Yes.
Olivier Muir. Do you know him? I met him in Cabis, which is near Glass. So at that time, I just started Dusita, and I'm looking for a production house, Accord and Parfum, who can help me produce the perfume. And I just fly there, and I was very happy to meet him because not only is a place where the perfumer I admire most,
Yes.
Edmund Nishka, used to live, and I really love.
He also defends lots of independent perfumer, Olivier Mort.
Exactly.
So, what do you think the first mission of the perfume should be?
I think the perfume should be giving us happiness whenever we wear. I think the perfume has a different like purposes depend the depend on what we define it, but all of the goals what we want to make as a perfume, it should contribute to our happiness and well-being.
Absolutely. Actually, what are the Dusita's perfume most important values?
It bring you the paradise and happiness of a peace of mind, the happiness inside you. That is our value.
So, Isara, Mélodie de l'amour, and Oud Infini from the first collection celebrate an hymn to freedom. Can you say a few words about each of them and saying why and how they definite the freedom?
Okay, so the first collection of Extrait de Parfum by Dusita represent aspect of life that lead to happiness. So Isra is the freedom itself. When you are free, you can be totally happy. Melody de l'amour is a bouquet of white flower, and it's the representation of love, unconditional love that is pure at the same time. While Oud Infini is the freedom of adventures. So when you are free to roam to different exotic countries, to explore new things in life, it's also the kind of happiness.
Absolutely. So, in fact, what does freedom smell like, and to what ingredients do you connect them to?
For me, freedom is like a state of mind when you are completely when basically the mind is quiet and we don't think about anything, and then when that moment of quietness and tranquility is freedom. For me, I relate to when you dive yourself into the nature completely deep into the forest. So I would relate to the woody, like sandalwood, vetiver, the green raw material. And then for the clarity of mind, I would use clary sage, which has also the healing therapeutic quality as well. And then I would add also a little hint of tonga beans.
All right. In fact, when we hear you, nature is very important for you.
Yes, very. It's like a important part of my life and also my inspiration.
And you would say it's more the forest or it's nature in general, in gardens, in other places?
I think the interesting thing about nature is that it can be my terrace, it can be in the forest, it can be in the park in Paris, it can be in the near the ocean. And nature can be found also in people. Nature is accepting all the changes we see in our environment.
If you have appreciated my conversation with Pissara, I invite you to come back and listen to the second part next Tuesday. In the meantime, have a good nose for smelling.